This is At Ease, the military podcast of Thomas Nelson Community College. I'm Gary Pounder, member of the military team here at TNCC. And on today's installment of the podcast, we're going to be talking about education and training benefits for members of the U.S. Coast Guard. And here to discuss that with us is someone who is certainly an expert in that area. We're going to be talking with Mr. Tony Goodloe, who is the Education Services Officer at the Training Center, the U.S. Coast Guard Training Center in Yorktown. And Tony, thanks a lot for joining us here on the podcast.
Thank you there, Mr. Ponder. I appreciate you inviting me to get the word out about the Coast Guard benefits, and definitely appreciate your time.
We are glad to do that, and by all means, please call me Gary. I always say Mr. Pounder was my father. I don't think I'm quite at that level yet, but I appreciate the courtesy there and everything. Let's begin by talking about your background, your experience. You, in fact, are a U.S. Navy retiree, spent 20 years on active duty. Tell us about your background, what led you to join the Navy, and the struggles and successes you had in trying to pursue your education as a member of the U.S. Navy.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Like I said, I'm from Toledo, Ohio, and so when I was graduating from high school at the time, I had aspirations of going to college, but I had decent grades, but then I was also playing sports, football, basketball, ran track. But at that time, it just wasn't feasible for me to go to school. Parents at that time couldn't afford it. And so I looked at the military because at that time, that was one of the things that they emphasized a lot. Go into military, you'll get your Montgomery GI Bill, and then you will be able to take college classes. And so that sold me in there. So when I first got in, I wasn't really I was thinking about it when I was a chance to see in the world because went to boot camp in San Diego, California. And then I got stationed in Pensacola, Florida. And then I got sent to Charleston, South Carolina. So within my first 2 years in the military, I was in 3 different locations and enjoying it because it was wonderful to go out there and see the world. What got me into the education, because after I started getting the qualifications on the ship, that's when everybody started talking about using tuition assistance, how to take advantage of what the military has to offer. So we had NC PACE, which is Navy College of Folk Programs. And on my first deployment, we had an instructor that rode the ships with us. And so I took a history class and a English class. And, I was thinking, okay, I can get this done. And then I hit a lapse where I was going different times. Then I ended up, got married. And so I was still kind of pursuing my career as far as in the military. But what I really got into it was my last 3 years in the military. I was still taking classes. I was probably about 30 credits short an associates. But then I started thinking, okay, if I get out, I got to start buckling down. And so using, again, tuition assistance at that time to finish up with some of the last classes at Tidewater Community College to finish my associates in early childhood education. So when I retired in 2005, because I was an operations specialist, then I started realizing that I didn't really take advantage of all the benefits that was applied to me. So what could I do to let the service members know, hey, instead of doing 20 years, you can achieve this a lot sooner. So that's when I started looking into the counseling part. And so that's when I got my degree in workforce education and started working for the Navy College at the Navy College Virtual Education Center located in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And then from that point right there, because learning all the ins and outs of tuition assistance, the JST, the Joint Service Transcripts, how to submit the TA, and letting the service member talking to them on the phone and just letting them know what they have available to them, if you just do the minimum every year, you can have an associate's in 4 years. And if you have an associate's, then continue to improve with the bachelor. And so that led me out to here at working at the Training Center Yorktown. And so just that is something I drive to them when I talk to them in a one-on-one, if I'm holding NDOT classes, letting them know that if you just stay with it, if you do, because I understand the military is not for everybody, but if you do 4 years, I want you to be able to walk out this organization with at least maybe a possibility of getting an associate's degree, but even the certifications, because in some fields, certifications are highly regarded.
Absolutely.
Just don't leave this organization the way that you came in, because you want to show self-improvement along with yourself, and then also with the military, because they want you to show self-improvement.
You mentioned the importance there of persistence and, going after your educational goals, even though the military will put some obstacles in your way. And I certainly experienced that during my Air Force days. But do you find, because the Navy, trying to pursue your education in the Navy presents some challenges, especially when you're on sea duty, do you find the mindset of a lot of sailors and even in the Coast Guard, folks who are on cutter duty and may deploy for extended periods of time, is there kind of a fallback mindset where they say, well, it's almost impossible to go to school right now, so I'll just wait until I get out, use my GI Bill benefits, and that kind of puts them further, down the road in terms of achieving their initial educational goals?
Yeah. I have to say, when I first came in, that was the mindset. Because a lot of times when individuals like your chain of command, your higher ups, they would talk to you about why you should come into the military, and education was one of the talking points. But when it came down to actually starting that process, it seems at times when I was in, there was always an obstacle. You have to get qualified. You have to get qualified on your ship. You have to get qualified in your rate. And so that was, I think, was the pushing point. I think right now, I believe the mindset has definitely changed. I think the higher chains, they see what the value of education is, because now the military is in a sense fighting with a lot of private sector jobs out there. And so in order to keep that number one guy in the military, they have to, in a sense, I think, kind of back up on their promise of an education. And I really believe that mindset has definitely changed compared to the 80s and the 90s when I was in, compared to the service members of today, where it is kind of, I can say forced upon, but when that chain of command is asking, okay, what are you doing now? Understand you're getting qualified, but are you looking to take college classes, whether if it's at a university or at a college or if it's online, but we want you to start showing self-progress. And so that every day that you're making yourself a better person, you're making yourself a person of more knowledge.
And of course, that makes the sailor, makes the Coast Guard member more valuable to the military, because the knowledge, the expertise they gain in off-duty education in many cases is directly applicable to what they're doing there in the Navy. It makes them a better leader, makes them a better manager, and again, that makes them more valuable to the military branch they happen to belong to. You also raised a very good point there too, and I'm a little bit older than you are, but we're kind of the same generation. Back in the 80s, if you were on a remote tour, you're on sea duty, you're at a location where there wasn't, any kind of education infrastructure, it was very difficult to take classes because you didn't have the option of online. Now with online, even a sailor on board ship, even though the connectivity can be limited from time to time, there's still the opportunity to take classes online and continue, as you said, to work toward that educational goal, even though you may be at sea for 6, 7, 8, or 9 months.
Right. And I think that also a lot of schools, because if you look at how far distance learning goes back, you're talking maybe 15, maybe 20 years. It's not that long of a period of time where the way to teach classes was in a classroom setting. And so I believe a lot of schools, they starting to value what the military members can bring, because on the full time, and you can attest to this, you're in the military, you're working 8-10 hour days, and some, definitely on the weekends if you're on deployment. So there's going to be times where that service member is not going to be able to sit in a classroom setting. And so what distance learning first brought about was, hey, I can get the service member enrolled into the class, and we can knock out some general education requirements. They can still progress towards their goals also. And so I definitely think, again, about the last 20 years, the distance learning, if you look at the numbers, has definitely, if you want to put a percentage over it, I would say at least 1,000 times. Because when I started working for the Navy College Office Virtual Education Center back in 2010, and it's been about 11 years now, and how that number, you would rarely find schools. You're talking about a minimum amount of schools that offer distance learning, and now pretty much all the schools have some type of distance learning classes at that university or college.
Absolutely. And, we found it here at Thomas Nelson, if you want to really effectively serve that military community, you have to offer a wide range of online classes. And I always cite the statistic that if you look at the tuition assistance program, which pays for college classes for active duty personnel, members of the Guard and Reserve, that's roughly a $500 or $600 million a year budget item for DOD. Then if you break that down on a yearly basis, about 85% of those TA dollars are going to online classes. So the military members, they're voting with their feet, they're voting with their benefits. They found that distance learning is really the ideal learning platform in most cases for them. And that's why, again, they're gravitating toward that particular option. And that's why, again, if a school wants to be competitive and be effective in the military space, they have to offer not only a wide range of classes, but a wide range of degree programs, and more importantly, a quality education in everything that they offer. Because certainly, military students tend to be very savvy consumers, and they know where the good schools are, and they also know which schools they should probably avoid in terms of quality, cost, and things like that. But getting back to your experience after you retired from the Navy, and then you finished off your bachelor's degree, went to work for the Navy College Office. Voluntary education in the Navy has kind of been in a transformation phase over the last decade, in the sense that for many years the Navy, like the other branches of service, had an education office at virtually every installation. At the college office, you would have counselors, you have other folks who could help the service members decide what they wanted to pursue, help them line up their education benefits, help them with things like CLEP testing, things like that. And then the Navy decided to centralize everything. Instead of having offices on every Navy installation, they were going to centralize and then basically have a centralized call-in type facility. And that was something that you were a part of. Just curious, your perspective, having been a part of that, do you think that has been an effective option for the Navy? Do you think that's an option that eventually all the services are going to follow?
I believe they might take up some of the model that was set up because what it allowed us to do, it did allow us to reach out to more, or have more service members reach out to us because of our times that we were working. But they still had offices overseas. So all the offices overseas are still open, but within the United States and United States territories, being there from 7 to 9 when we first started, from 7 in the morning to 9 at night, it allowed service members that, especially from the off-duty standpoint, where they would get off work at 3, 4, 5 o'clock, different time zones, when their offices would be closed, they could call into our office or our center and discuss their educational goals. So it worked, like I said, it worked out good. Then again, we started getting more calls when a lot of schools started going to the online format, distance learning, as you want to call it. And so we were, in a sense, on an average day, a person at our center was getting about 100, 125 calls a piece. And we're talking, we were working 2 shifts from 7 to probably about 4, and then the other shift would come in around 2, and they would work to 9 o'clock at night. So you were busy, definitely busy talking to service members, pulling up their records on your computers, getting that information, and kind of directing them through a counseling session online or through the phone system to have them obtain, what they could look at and stuff, kind of break it down to JST the best we could, getting them good schools and stuff. Hey, look at the school here based off their major, and assisting them during that process. But I have to say, there's nothing like the face-to-face.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, having experienced both in the face-to-face format, which is a lot of what you do up there at the Coast Guard Station right now, and then in the virtual space with the Navy, College Center over in Portsmouth, I believe it is. Do you find that the sailors were satisfied with the service they were getting, the support they were getting through that virtual portal, that virtual, talking to a counselor over the phone or online versus face-to-face?
Yeah, because the way we looked at it, your seasoned sailors, the ones that had already used tuition assistance, the one that already had completed an associate's or bachelor's and were progressing towards that next degree, It was easier to talk to them because they already knew what to do. But I think that the first time sailors, the ones who first time trying to sign up for classes, that's where I believe the face to face could work out more, because talking to them over the phone and having them, while I'm pulling up my computer screen, having them pull up their computer screen, sometimes could be a challenge because they might not have been on the right page.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, FaceTime became a part of it, so we could do share screens and stuff like that. But again, for the seasoned veterans that are out there that were completing, easy to talk to, just gave them a couple of steps. But that first time sailor, I definitely feel it today, because even when I'm here at Training Center Yorktown, they come in, they're excited about going to school. They feel that pride. And I think when you can get that face to face, and you can see that if you're matching that pride and that you're showing them, hey, you can do this. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be that quick fix where I can get a degree in 2 years, but it's going to take that time. And if you got that same energy and you match it with them, you're definitely going to have a repeat customer. And they see that, and they're just, because they, in a sense, they want to help out, they want to be appreciative, and they want to be that success story in their families.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing I kind of drive also. Are you the first person to go to school? The first person, you might have been the first person to join the military. And so in 2 to 3 years, when I see that you did finish that degree, then you can be that example also to the young sailors that is coming in after you. And I want you to share that, give that testimony, to share your travels and your stories with them to push them to be better.
We see the same thing from a school counseling perspective. We, before COVID, had presence on a number of installations around here, to include the training center out there in Yorktown. And, just like you said a moment ago, the young sailors, the young Coast Guard members, the young airmen, the young soldiers, they're the ones who really, benefit most from the face-to-face, personal touch type counseling environment, because many never really thought of themselves as being potential college students before. Now they've come in the military, they're doing well, they've mastered complex jobs and skills, and they realize, hey, I'm a pretty sharp individual here, and I'm definitely ready to take that step of working toward my college education. But having never been in that kind of environment before, it can be a little bit daunting, a little bit challenging. So they benefit from having that face-to-face environment, that one-on-one counseling that you can only do, across a table or across a desk or what have you. But as you said, once they take a few classes, they do well. They begin to understand how the system works, what classes they need for their degree, and so forth and so on. At that point, it largely becomes hands-off. They can go online, they can sign up for classes, they know how to go to the respective military portal and sign up for their TA benefits or what have you. And just, they're basically on autopilot. You see them at graduation, pat them on the back and wish them well as they move on and, work toward their bachelor's, master's, whatever the next step in their educational journey is going to be. Now, obviously, you spent a lot of time working with the Navy. You made the transition to the Coast Guard. Just curious what it was that prompted you to leave the Navy education establishment and then, come on over to Training Center Yorktown and become the Education Services Officer over there.
I think the main reason is that I had been, again, at the Navy College Virtual Education Center for a little bit over 10 years. And then seeing the ins and outs on the phone centers. But then one of my coworkers, she got a position also at the Coast Guard working downtown Norfolk at ETQC. And just hearing her talk about it, saying what they were doing, and it kind of brought back some, old feelings of saying, what, I want to get back to the face-to-face. To get to there, to be a part of a success story. And so talking to her about it, and then this position came, I applied for it back in October of 2019. And then once I, interviewed and was talking to them, and it just felt good, just that one-on-one or the 3-on-1, the conversations that we were having for the interview, and knowing what my role would be. And I was excited about it. I was ready to go. I had got my notes and stuff together when I accepted the position, and I had got my books and everything. I got my list of my colleges I'm going to be contacting. And the first day that I was hired to start working here is when COVID came and we had to shut down. And so I kind of had to, come back a little bit because I was not allowed to come on base for the first couple of months, because I didn't actually come into the office until sometime in July. I mean, July.
Wow.
And so just getting back into that flow, getting built back up to where I am right now. And I've been communicating with several schools in the area, letting them know that Training Center Yorktown is, we're back in business right now. To let the service members know also, hey, there are great schools out there, but let me tell you about some of the schools in this area, because like I said, I've been stationed in this area twice. I was here from 1991. My fault, 1990. No, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Maryland. From 1994 to 1999. Then I came back in 2003, and this is where I retired. 2002. This is where I retired at. And so, like I said, I like Virginia because I live out in Suffolk right now. But just letting them know that, I really like talking to the service members because, again, letting them know what their possibilities are, because at times, as you know, when you're working, everybody understands you're military first, and that's the key. But what can we do to make you a better person that's going to prepare you for the outside world? Because again, I know the military is not for everybody. Yeah, when I was in, I was thinking 4 years and I'm getting out and that's it. And then 20 years later, I'm standing having a retirement ceremony, and just getting that information out there to them. So again, the face-to-face is probably the number one thing that brought me here. And just talking to the service members when they walk past, they just pop in. And some of those are the best conversations that I've had. My door's open. I'm in here maybe typing on the computer. And hey, Mr. Goodloe, can I ask you a question? And that one question leads to another question. And that another question leads to, hey, look at the school right here. What programs are you interested in? And so maybe a 2 to 3 minute conversation end up being a 35, 40-minute counseling session where they're walking away excited, looking for that next term date to start that class.
Obviously, as you point out, you came to the training center during a very unusual time with, COVID-19, putting the brakes on a lot of things in terms of on-base activities, functions, and what have you. But given the fact that we're now starting to edge toward normalcy once again, just curious, again, given your Navy background, what do you see in terms of the education mindset, the education program? What are the biggest differences between the Navy and the Coast Guard?
I think it's kind of where I'm at also. Being on a base when I was at I started off at the Portsmouth Hospital, and then I went over to Dam Neck, which is a training center, and then over at Little Creek, which was where they are right now. But I believe the biggest mindset is, again, I think where I'm stationed at. I am at a training center. And so with the A school students here going through the various A schools, that mindset of, hey, I am in a learning environment is definitely passed down from the A school students to the permanent party members. And then another thing is that allowing, and I think this is huge, allowing the students, if they are A school students, to take a possibility of using TA during a college class if they can handle it. When I was in the military, if you were in an A school environment, you had to, in a sense, wait to get to your next duty station to maybe engage in some type of college classes. But right off the bat, they're telling them, hey, if you can handle it, take advantage of using tuition assistance. And if you got your chain of command, putting that out there to you, and I think that's wonderful. That's a great thing to have when you have somebody backing you up to say, hey, understand you're in A school, but you know what? If you can take a college class, take advantage of it.
Do you find a lot of students that are going through the A schools here at the training center are able to find the time and get the approval to, take a college class or two while they're going through training at the training center?
Yes, I do. Because like I said, I have people come in and they'll start off, but I believe because also COVID has allowed that, because when you figure when a service member here and they come here to A school, they're kind of in a sense, can't leave the base. And so when they get out of school, at say 1500, 1600 or 3 or 4 o'clock that evening, there's a lot of time where they have to themselves. So I see a lot of instructors are letting them know, why don't you look into a class? You can do a class 3 days a week. So when you leave here in 16 weeks or in 10 weeks, 12 weeks, you can have a couple of college credits under your belt. So when you start really your military career, when you get to your next duty station, and you see how it works, you know how the process is, and then you're one step closer to achieving your academic goals.
And we should also point out, too, sometimes I think there's a tendency for those of us in the education establishment to kind of look at education benefits as being kind of cookie cutter for the military, really interchangeable. And that's true to a large degree, but there are some differences. For example, the TA limit, the amount of money the Coast Guard gives to its members for college classes each year, is lower than what we see in the other branches of service.
But there is a challenge. I don't know if you heard about this or not. Effective Thursday, with March 11th, the Coast Guard increased their cap to $3,750.
Very good. Now, the old cap was what, $2,275? The previous cap? Okay, $2,250. So that's a significant hike, and it puts basically the Coast Guard back in the same category as the other services, which typically have a cap, and it will vary depending on the budget from year to year, anywhere from $3,800 a year up to about $4,500 a year, which, again, if a military member is smart and savvy about using their benefits, you can make that money go a long, long way. And as we point out here at the school, that if you're a junior enlisted member in particular, you're also eligible for things like Pell Grants, which can give you even more money to use toward your education.
Right. But I have to say right now, I think the Coast Guard, we kind of jumped everybody. Everybody was, I know on the Marines and the Navy, they were a 12 credits limit. So you're talking at the most, that was $3,000.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So I do believe when that message came out, that kind of signaled to the service members in the Coast Guard, okay, not only does my chain value my education, but the higher ups in DC, they value my education also. And we were, in a sense, a lot of people were shocked because we were thinking if it was an increase, it might be about $500, or it might go back up to $3,000. But to give an additional $1,500, that's carrying on right now to the end of the fiscal year. That's a great way to start, and it's a great way to tell, I believe, the service members, hey, we believe in you, but now it's up to you. And I've been telling people that popping in there, hey, they gave us another $1,500. You got to use it.
Absolutely.
You gotta put those applications in to achieve that goal.
Well, I'm sure, you're like me, you've been in the education business for a while. Going back to the middle of the last decade, a little bit before that, there was a time when the military was facing a real budget squeeze, and somebody in the Pentagon got the bright idea, hey, let's just, knock off TA for the rest of the year. And I don't think they were really counting on the howls of protest and the congressional complaints. And as I recall, TA got restored very, very quickly because, again, it's a morale issue. It is a benefits issue. It's a retention issue for the military. And it keeps a lot of people in uniform because they can use the TA money to work toward their degree, whether it's an associate's, bachelor's, graduate degree, and then potentially look at transferring their GI Bill benefits to their spouse or their child. So TA is a very, very important program. Now, as we continue the discussion here, what I'd like to kind of touch on, you work obviously with Coast Guard personnel up there in your position right now. For that new Coast Guard member who's coming in, just starting out, maybe has completed their A school, was going to be stationed here in the local area, what's the kind of presentation or speech or maybe sermon that you deliver to them in terms of, okay, you're now trained, you're ready to go out there and do great things in the Coast Guard. Here's a game plan that you ought to think about in terms of not neglecting and pursuing your off-duty education.
Yeah, because I do get a chance to talk to some of the A school students. They have an NDOC process. So when they first come on board, the school chiefs do allow me, in a sense, to talk to them. It's a quick brief. But what I do tell them is that before you leave, if you get a chance, I give them my address, my information here. I will connect you to your next ESO, wherever you're going, whether if it's in Alaska, California, Miami, wherever your next duty station is, because I want you to start building that relationship with that ESO, even though you might not be here at Training Center Yorktown. When you get down there and make that initial contact with them. Now, another thing I also tell service members about is that, hey, if you are, married, bring your wife in, bring your spouse in, because I believe in, at the time when I was going to school, my wife was going to school. And so we kind of, fed off of each other and sit up there and say, hey, let's complete this together. Even though she was a little bit ahead of me, but I believe that families, when they get into that process, and they start doing things together, it's definitely building that foundation up so that they can pass along to their children or child ones that they have. So I always encourage service members here, hey, send your wife in to me, because you never know when something could come across my desk, scholarship opportunities, other things that they could qualify for, they might not know about.
And of course, nowadays we have the MyCAA program for military spouses of service members in selected grades, E1 through E5, W1, W2, O1, O2, and that's something, again, going back, to kind of our generation that wasn't around. So there's a tremendous program there providing up to $4,000 over 2 years where military spouses can use that for just a wide range of educational programs, develop marketable and portable skills they can take with them while they accompany their service member to assignments both here and even overseas. And, even today, it's still kind of surprising to discover the number of military spouses, young military spouses who might qualify, who are not aware of programs like MyCAA. So certainly, that's very good advice to bring your spouse along so that, he or she can find out what they might qualify for in terms of pursuing their education as well.
Exactly. And so again, and I also tell them, I said, I understand if you're here for schools, but we have other materials out in our office. We have books where if you want to improve ASVAB scores, ACT, SAT testing, we also have books that shows like the top 120 positions or 120 jobs that's out there in the market. We'll also give them site information, ONET, that they can look into. Because again, if we can provide this information to the service member and they can be happy, and we definitely can provide it to their spouse and make them happy. Again, once they have that connection and say, you know what, let's do something together, it's definitely going to add to their life, add to their relationship, which will also going to add to the Coast Guard. And letting them know that, hey, they got multiple people taking care of them.
You mentioned the testing aspect there a moment ago. Talk to us a little bit about the emphasis you place on things. You mentioned, materials to help them improve their ASVAB scores if they want to cross-train to a different rating, at the appropriate time. That would help them do that. Or things like CLEP exams, which allow them to earn college credit without having to go online or sit in a classroom. So talk a little bit about the testing piece and the emphasis you place on that in talking to your Coast Guard personnel.
Yeah, so especially as Dante's is a CLEP and DSST program ran, and the one thing that they came up with that went to effect on October of 2020 was the Meals Benefits app. And that app right there is a great app. And again, when I'm talking to the service members, I say, if you got a smartphone, you got Facebook, you got Instagram, put this app on your phone because it gets real-time information that's updated. And then it also kind of gives them study material that they can use to get information on CLEP or DSST testing. Now, also ASVABs, we have books here that they can check out. We just ask you to bring them back in good condition. Don't highlight them like that, but you as long as you want to use them, you can have them. Just bring them back. The way to improve those scores, ACT, SAT. If you're trying to do the GRE, the GMAT, we got those type of books here. And again, this is something you don't have to pay for. You can check it out, use it to study, prepare, and then once you take it, just please return it. And I tell them that. And also, again, before we have books. They have on like for GI jobs, for entrepreneurs, there's magazines that are sitting out there that service members can take advantage of. And so instead of going online and downloading stuff, you can have it and you can take that with you. And it's a service. So because if you have a good business idea, maybe using that book can definitely help you out. The one thing with CLEP and DSST testing, though, it was kind of stalled a little bit because of COVID. So hopefully, we know that we used to do testing over at Fort Eustis, but now I just found out that Langley, the University of Maryland Global Campus, is opening up, so they're doing testing over there.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully we'll have other sites that will be opening up shortly that will allow service members to go back into it. Because I know COVID did shut a lot of things down, and a lot of service members, they kind of, I believe, forgot about the CLEPing and DSST testing. But when those sites do open back up, I believe it's a great way to earn college credits that's not funded with TA, but they can also achieve their goals by taking those tests.
Absolutely. And we should point out, too, that for an active duty service member, I don't think there's any cost for taking a CLEP examination. For civilian, I think the fee is something like $80. So I had a good friend in the Air Force who CLEPed out of 24 hours of credit toward his bachelor's degree simply by picking the class he was going to target, getting the CLEP study guide, spending about a month studying, maybe an hour a day, and going in and then taking it. And folks, tend to think that, well, the only way I can get the credit with CLEP is by scoring like, 100 or a 95 on the exam. And that's not true. Not true. The threshold for getting the credit is actually much lower than that. So if you're willing to invest the time and effort, again, it's a great way for military members to earn some free college credit, which they can roll into their eventual degree program. We've been talking about the impact that COVID's had on voluntary education, on military installations here in the local area. Again, as the threat of COVID hopefully now is abating, what do you see in terms of the education program there at the training center? What are some things that you would like to do to kind of return to normal, maybe build on the existing foundation, and even new features, new programs you would like to see added to the educational program at Training Center Yorktown?
Okay. For one, just to get some of the new students that will roll around here acclimated to the college life, the college classes. One of the things that I probably will be looking into is that when I was in the military, we used to have schools on base, and they used to have a room set aside or the center set aside. So if you wanted to take a class, this school was providing that. So a lot of service members didn't have to go to the university. They could take a classroom. They could take a class in our classroom. That is something I'm definitely looking into, because I believe if you can offer a class or two a semester, and that would definitely show, I believe, the service members, hey, we're serious about this because we're bringing the teacher to you. So that's one thing I'm looking into. Of course, I'm looking to do a college fair in the future here, sometime around the June, July timeframe. Once we get a better idea on what the COVID situation looks like, it could be either virtual, when I'm getting that information as we speak now, or it could be a face-to-face where I get to, I'm finally seeing you face-to-face, even though we did have conversations, texts and emails, but I get to also see some of the other service members, other colleges. And I think that once students or service members see, they've heard of Thomas Nelson, but you know what, let me put a face to Thomas Nelson now. And I think that it's that warmth that a school can provide a service member in talking to them, because I know some about your school, but you are the subject matter expert on what Thomas Nelson is doing, and along with the other schools. And so I think that's the biggest thing right there, just getting that service member that face to face, not only with myself, but with other schools in this area. Because I think here, this area right here is a wealth of knowledge. People that I've met at the Virginia Acme. I never went to a CCME, but hopefully I'll be able to go to one this year. But everybody I talk to, they're excited about helping the Coast Guard. The joy is in their voice, and I want the service members to see that and say, you know what, this is a school I could be interested in attending.
Sure. And along that same line, when you're talking to Coast Guard members, the population you're serving up there at the training center, what do they tell you they're looking for in terms of educational programs, maybe specific classes or degrees, preferred learning platforms, and things like that? What kind of feedback are you getting from them? And conversely, what can schools, from your perspective, how can they do a better job in serving your population?
Okay. It's kind of like it's like two ways on that. The senior members, the ones that already have the degrees, working towards it, they're more on to the project management, the HR type of degrees, business, business administration, IT, cybersecurity, because I think they've been paying attention to what's happening out there in the world. At remembers a couple of years ago, border security was a big one that was happening down in Texas and California. Now, information technology is still huge. So I'm getting the senior members that are looking to finish their degrees off in that. A lot of the junior members, first time, they're kind of unsure. And I understand, because I did read, I've told people here when I talk to them, I said, I've never, and I might be wrong, but I said, I've never met one person that started with one degree, said they want to do something, and they stuck with it. People, you're going to change your mind. But the one thing, I do emphasize, okay, if you're going to change your mind, let's get your gen ed requirements out, because those gen ed requirements are not going away. And so when you're starting to finish up towards, when you get near that 40 to 50 credit, then you can start looking. So a lot of them are coming in saying, let me finish some general education requirements. Let me get those knocked out. Then let me look at something else to kind of figure what else is going on.
Sure.
So, but it kind of goes back between that information right now. So I think that for the last class I talked to, a lot of them were into the business aspect, the accounting, the human resource, finance, and stuff like that.
Along those same lines, in the time we've got left here, let's talk a little bit about credentialing. There's been a huge push by the military in general in recent years to, as you had indicated earlier, knowing that most service members will probably not be able to finish even their associate's degree during a single 4-year enlistment. So the focus now is, instead of thinking in terms of degree, maybe think in terms of credential or a series of stackable credentials that will give you new skills, new certifications, and that way if you decide the military is not for you and you get out when your enlistment is up, you're going to have a credential that you can potentially use to find a good civilian job. Give me your perspective on credentialing. What are some of the programs that you find your Coast Guard members up there are looking for in terms of credentialing and certification?
From there's two programs that a lot of them are interested in: the U.S. MAP and CG Cool. And U.S. MAP, I tell them when they first come in that it is probably one of the easiest certifications that you can do, because in a sense you'll get the credit hours for what you do on a regular work day, or whatever, it's 8, 9, 10 hours a day that you do. As long as you maintain your log and you keep up with that, then you will get a certification, from the Department of Labor based off of entry level 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000 hours based off of time. But I just also tell them, I usually show them like a green notebook, and when you go in and you start working on equipment, document everything. So at the end of the day, you can start writing it out and filling out that request. So again, when your supervisor signs it off at the end of the month, you want to make sure those hours are documented so you can get a nice certification that helps them out. Then, because I also tell them, I say a certification, degrees are great, but in certain fields, a certification shows the people that you're trying to get a job for, hey, I have the training to do that. And so that I don't necessarily, I can focus more on another part of it. But instead of it's like on the job training, I can show you what I've done because of what I have on the certification. And with CG Cool, which is Coast Guard Cool, that has definitely picked up because they did they passed some information last year, 2020. I think they had received 67 applications for CG Cool.
At the training center?
Right. Well, no, down in ETQC.
Okay, understand.
All right. Now, at the end of February, they were at 84 applications. And so you figure we're still within the second quarter. And so I think that a lot of service members and a lot of E5s and E6s are getting into these certifications where they see the value of it in certain fields, and a lot of them here is like dealing with the diesel mechanics, those type of certifications are running. A lot of them are being put in project management, those type of certifications where I can take a class, sign up for it, and have CG Cool reimburse me for it. They're working great. And so in that program, again, like I said, you're talking 67 for the whole fiscal year. And at the end of February, they were at 84 applications, and it is still growing. So definitely a lot of service members are taking advantage of that because they do see the value of what a certification can give them.
For folks in our audience who may not be familiar with the program, explain CG Cool, which COOL is the acronym. All the services have a program like this, and it stands for, I think, Credentialing Opportunities Online or something like that. Explain how that works for Coast Guard members.
All right. Well, with that, you will go to the website, and it's all of them together, but you will click on the Coast Guard emblem, and you can select it either by enlisted officers or chief warrant officers. And say if an enlisted person, they will go on and they will select something within their rate. So if you are an MK, you will select that. If you are a BM, you will select that. And then they will have a list. And on the site, it shows all the credentials that service members can take, and it also gives them a breakdown on the entry, the value of it, and it gives a description on what that credentials can give to you. If it's a renewal, they will let you know. If it's a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year renewal, it will give you information on that. ONET is a part of that because ONET will break down and let you know that, hey, this is what the average person can earn doing the certification. This is what it requires if it's a physical labor. And like I said, it's I'm still learning it, but I think that is one of the best sites out there because when in the Navy, we knew about it, but didn't know about it. But when I got here and I started looking at it and reading it, I was like, man, I definitely missed out on something of when I first came in because I was like, I kind of felt excited because I was like, I should have realized that this program is one of the best ones, and it's one of the best ones, but it's one of the least talked about ones because military, when they hear of education, first thing comes to mind is tuition assistance. And the COOL, whether it's Navy COOL, CG COOL, Marines, is probably one of the best kept secrets out there. But I think that right now, in today's world, it is starting to come out of its shell, and knowing that this is going to be a major asset to the service members.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And, again, for all the branches of the service, greater emphasis on credentialing, certification, and young people realizing that, again, I'm not going to stay in the military. I need something beyond what I have right now to help me gain, productive employment once I get out. Well, getting that additional credential or credentials that are tied to your particular MOS, AFSC, or rating, that's a great way to do that. And there are funding sources that are mentioned. They're listed there on the COOL website that can help them pay for that without having to, utilize other benefits or even, have to dip into something like their GI Bill. So I think COOL is one of those programs that, you kind of do that shake my head routine and kind of wonder, why didn't we do this, 40, even 50 years ago? Because right. it truly is a great idea. Now, one more thing I want to touch on with you before we kind of wrap things up here. And it's in the same vein as COOL, and that is the SkillBridge program. Initially, the Coast Guard was not a participant in SkillBridge, which is a training credentialing type program aimed at service members during their last 6 months on active duty. They're given up to 16 weeks to go into a program that will teach them new skills, award credentials, again, to help them, get ready for transition to civilian life. What is the latest in the Coast Guard on SkillBridge? Has the service actually joined the program now? And if they haven't, do you see Coast Guard becoming a part of SkillBridge at some point in the future?
Okay, I don't know the latest on it, but I think we had a meeting with a lot of the local ESOs because we do training once end of the week, end of the month. And I have heard rumblings that they would like the Coast Guard to be a part of it. And I do believe that, especially if that service member is getting out and if they're looking to, in a sense, better themselves, to be a part of that program. And I think that if we get enough people pushing that and sit up there and say, hey, because it can be a benefit because you want to make a save. Even though they might be getting out, you want to make that happy because you want to be known as a service that is taking care of the person, whether they do 4 years, whether they do 20 years or 30 years, because that means a lot to that service member and also to this family or her family. So I think it is a great program to use, and hopefully there'll be more pushback and more feedback on this in the upcoming years.
Okay. Very quickly, for Coast Guard personnel who would like to avail themselves of the services you offer as the Education Services Officer at the Training Center, what is the best way for them to contact and get in touch with you?
Okay. They can reach me on email. My email is tony.goodloe, and that's Tony, Tony.Goodloe, is Goodloe at uscg.mil. I can be reached via phone at 757-856-2605. That's a direct number. And like I said, emails, I'm very good at replying back because I do understand, because I'm not in my office every day. So I try to give a 24-hour window. Sometimes I don't meet it, but I try to make sure that if a service member has a question or an inquiry about something, that I do return that reply back within 24 hours.
And just to confirm, people that do have access to the training center who can get on base right now can see you at your office when you're in your office.
Yes, I'm in my office every Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7:30 to about 1630. I'm located over in Canfield Hall, room 116. And like I said, I think I have probably one of the best locations, because of when I walk out my back door, I got the York River right there. It's sitting right there, and I got the parade field right there also. So, and that's one thing I'm kind of looking forward to once we get back to some type of normalcy, to see the parades of the graduating A schoolers, because I heard a lot of people talk about it, but I haven't got a chance to experience it because of COVID. But I do see a lot of deer walking out here. They're marching out there early in the morning or when I'm leaving. The view out here is probably one of the best ones. This is probably beautiful. This is definitely a beautiful base.
Yeah, I think somebody once said the running joke is that the A school for deer is located there at the training center, because there are so many. I think what they learned is, you're not going to be shot inside the perimeter, and so you see them out there walking around, eating grass, doing what deer normally do, and it's a lovely base, and the view from where you are there in Canfield Hall. Step outside, see the York River and everything. It really is a very scenic location. It's maybe not quite the corner office on the 30th floor, but it's pretty doggone close.
Yes, it is. It's a wonderful view.
Tony, any final thoughts, any final guidance, words of wisdom you would like to offer to folks who, will be utilizing your services, for Coast Guard members out there thinking about continuing or pursuing their education?
I'd just like to tell them, just in a sense, take advantage of everything that the service has to offer you. One of the things I tell service members, like branding. People, that's the key. And I hear the young people talk about that. Talking to my daughter, because she's 16-year-old, and she wants to do branding. I say, well, you got to put it together. You're in the military. That's a check. A lot of people have security clearances. That's a check. If you do 4 to 5 years, you're getting that military experience. That's a check. So why not add to it by obtaining a degree or a certification, so that you're making yourself a viable asset to the workforce? Now, and of course, if you do more years and if you make great, that's definitely a plus. But my thing is, when you leave this organization, walk out better than what you came in. And if you can accomplish that, you're definitely going to be that role model, not only to your kids and your families, but you never know who you might impact just by somebody watching you as an individual.
That is so true. And one more time, you just gave it a moment ago, but once again, phone number and email address for folks who need to contact you.
Okay, they can contact me at email address is Tony, Tony.Goodloe, and it's Tony.Goodloe at uscg.mil. Phone number over at Canfield Hall every Tuesday and Thursday from 7:30 to about 1630 is area code 757-856-2605.
That is Mr. Tony Goodloe. He is the Education Services Officer at the U.S. Coast Guard Training Center in Yorktown. He's responsible for planning, developing, and executing all aspects of the voluntary education programs of the Coast Guard at that location, to include tuition assistance, testing, and all the other things we're talking about here today. Tony, once again, thank you so much for taking time to join us here on the podcast.
All right, Gary, and I'd like to thank you and Thomas Nelson for having me do the podcast.
It's our great pleasure, and look forward to having you on a future episode. Once again, that was Tony Goodloe, the Education Services Officer at the U.S. Coast Guard Training Center in Yorktown. I'm Gary Pounder. This has been At Ease, the military podcast of Thomas Nelson Community College. Thanks for listening.